the word fill in for him. I'm going to speak in his absence, okay? And so y'all pray for me as we get into the message the Lord laid on my heart. Before we do that, how about Children's Church? I believe we got some people ready to off to the races on Children's Church. One, two, anybody? All right. All right, I'd like to speak to you this morning really about, I'm going to use a launch verse. In fact, my launch verse is Proverbs 29:18, the verse that many of you are already familiar with, but I'm going to look at it maybe a little different way. It says, where there's no vision, the people are unrestrained. The King James Version said the people perish. But happy is he who keeps the law. And, you know, I've heard this verse used a number of times in church growth and winning souls to the Lord. We've heard it a lot of times, and it has a relationship to do with, you know, where do you want your church to be? But I think today I'm going to look at a vision of where not only our church, but we want to see where our government is and where we are as individuals. I'm going to speak about the vision that we have of where we should be, where our country should be, and certainly where the church should be. And we're going to start out on a rather distasteful section, a place where Samaria is in very dark history. 2 Kings 6:24 is where we'll start out. And we're going to look at the siege of Samaria. And as I say, I want to say something that I don't say. The Bible says that you have to, whole breakfast is already digested and everything. I don't hope to mess up your lunch. But I'm going to read just what's in God's Word. 2 Kings chapter 6, verse 24, beginning, it says, "Then came after this, that Hadad, the king of Aram, gathered all his army and went up and besieged Samaria. There was a great famine in Samaria, and behold, they besieged it until a donkey's head was sold for 80 shekels of silver, and a fourth of a cab of dove's dung was sold for 5 shekels of silver." I can imagine that. But anyway, the king of Israel was passing by on the wall. A woman cried out to him, saying, "Help us, help my lord, O king." And he said, "If the Lord does not help you, from where shall I help you? From the threshing floor or from the wine press?" Because all of those were empty now. And the king said to her, What is the matter with you?" And she answered, "This woman said to me, 'Give me your son that we may eat him today.' Oh my, how lowly and fallen. And we will eat my son tomorrow." So we boiled my son and ate him. And I said to her on the next day, "Give your son that we may eat him." For she had hidden her son. When the king heard the words of the woman, he tore his clothes. Now he was passing by on the wall. Passing by on the wall. And the people looked, and behold, and he had sackcloth beneath on his body. He was in sort of a semi-formal mourning at this time. Then, let's see, is that the next one I have? Let me make sure we're in verse 30. Yes. We see that the king Jehoram had no way of helping this lady. I mean, things were so dire that they had turned cannibals. You can only imagine how bad things got. You say, well, that could never happen. Well, I think it's probably happened more than once in history. But here we have a picture of this, the people of God, the northern kingdom of Samaria, got themselves in such a shape that they were eating their children. Now, outside the gate, we go on to chapter 7. Outside the gate, in chapter 7, verse 3 and 5, we find the story of some lepers out there. The lepers who were outside the gate. Now, lepers were always outside the gate. You didn't get inside the city walls because of your disease. You were always considered outside the gate. And so anyway, they're out there, and they considered this in chapter 7, verse 3 through 5. If I can find it here. It says, "Now there were 4 leper men at the entrance of the gate, and they said to one another, 'Why do we sit here until we die? If we say we will enter the city, then the famine is in the city, and we will die there. And if we sit here, we will die also. Now therefore come and let us go over to the camp of the Arameans. If they spare us, we will live, and if they kill us, we will but die.' So what difference does it make? We're going to die anyway, so let's just go try it out." The story is very interesting. You go over there, we know what they found. God had, in the middle of the night, made a sound of an army coming, and had scared the Ben-Hadad tribe off. And they ran away so fast, they left all their provisions we're at. I mean, you know, it's just so much food to choose from. I don't know how long it took them. I mean, they were filling it. I guess they were clothes. They hadn't seen, you know, the lepers, all they could wear was rags. They trying on new clothes, and all these things were going on. And they thought, man, we have made it. We are in tall cotton right now. But then you go on and see in their minds, after they've done this for a little while, verse 9, chapter 7, verse 9 tells us, and it says, then they said one to another, we are not doing right. This day is a day of good news, but we are keeping silent. If we wait until morning light, punishment will overtake us. Now therefore come and let us go and tell the king's household. Now from here, most of the time the message heard was talking about evangelizing the city. And that's a good message. They went over there, they had everything that was needed, they had everything that the city needed, but they didn't, you know, they said, well, we got to go tell them, we got to go share this with them. And that is a good message for evangelism, but that's not where I want to go with this. I think they saw in their minds that the problem was they were starving to death in Samaria. That the problem was a lack of food. But I say, dear brothers and sisters, the problem in Samaria went much deeper than that. How did they get in the situation where they are, where they eat one another's children? How did they get that far? These are God's people. And how did God allow that to happen to them? We've got to go back and look at some recent history of this city, of the northern kingdom, and see some of the things that brought them to the point that's so unimaginable to us. Can the church ever get to a point of doing things that we never thought we'd ever do? Can the country get to that point? Can you get to that point where things just a few years ago you thought were impossible that are happening in the lives and in the lives of the church itself, and the lives of our country? I know all y'all can say amen about the country. Man, I tell you what, every time you watch the news, you ever get to the point where they can't shop you anymore?
Right.
I mean, this is like a social class. I kind of get off topic sometimes. I was listening this morning about these sex change surgeries where this one family decided to let, I think it was an 8-year-old girl that wanted to be a boy at 8 years old. And they allowed this 8-year-old to go through this sex change surgery. My head would explode. It never ceases to amaze me how far we've come in this country. Well, we'll see some of the things that maybe has brought us here. And we're going to talk about some of the things that maybe brought Samaria to this point. Maybe we'll see some of the things that have brought America and us to this point. And the question that I want to talk about is the lepers thought they needed food. Let's talk about more. Folks, if we don't wake up, if we don't pay attention, if we don't do some of the things that need to be done today, our country's on a skid. It's sliding so fast. And I'm afraid so many times our churches are on a skid. I mean, things are going on, and I'm not talking about Giles Creek, but it can happen to Giles Creek. I'm talking about the church that has lacked the influence. The church no longer has the stand out like they used to. I remember I've been saved by, I think, 46 or 47 years. I have trouble keeping up total rate. I won't have been saved. I think it's 47 years. But I remember when I first got saved, the church was well here. I mean, there was things that the world was doing over there that we didn't have anything to do with. I mean, we just won't get involved in that kind of stuff. And then as I see, as years went by, as those 47 years have progressed, the world is still over there, but you know what? The church is now here where the world used to be 47 years ago. And headed that way. You know that Barnett Research, everybody heard of Barnett Research? Brother Terry quotes a lot. Barnett Research said about 5 years ago that 3 out of 4 teenagers between the ages of 18 and 28, 3 out of 4 teenagers leave the church by the time they're 28 years old. Yeah, same report said that names of denominations, but same report said by 2050 there would no longer be a Southern Baptist denomination or convention. It would be Southern Baptist now, but it won't be large enough. What's happening? What's changing? Let's see some of the things. I believe, number one, compromise politics. Compromise. We're compromising what we know is right, what we know we should do, and we're sacrificing our standards, sacrificing what we know we should do for expediency, or for what needs to be done right now. Go back in just a few chapters, chapter 3, 2 Kings. In between here, there's several things that Elisha does. There's several healing of the widow's boil. Several things go on. But let's go back to chapter 3. Now look at verse 7 and 8. The story is that, well, let me read the verses first. Chapter 3, verse 7 and 8. And then he went and sent word to Jehoshaphat, the king of Judah, saying, the king of Moab has rebelled against thee. Will you go with me to fight against Moab? This is a note that's sent from Josiah to Jehoshaphat. Josiah is the northern king. He just assumed the throne from his daddy. You know who his daddy was? You probably heard his name before, Ahab. What kind of fellow was Ahab? Oh, my. You know, he was an ungodly man, and it says that Joash followed in his footsteps. So now he's calling out the king of the southern tribe. The southern tribe is where Judah is. The southern tribe is where Jerusalem is. The southern tribe is the godly side. The ones who, oh yeah, they've had a lot of problems. They've messed up a lot, but they're at least more godly than the northern tribe is, the severity it is. So he calls on his, notice what he says to him. He says, the king of Moab was rebelled against me. Will you go with me to fight Moab? And he said, I will go up. I just said Jehoshaphat was one of the godly side. Well, wait a minute. I am as you are. My people are your people. My horses are your horses. He said, which way shall we go up? And he answered, the way of the way of the wilderness of Edom. Let's get the picture here. Jehoshaphat, more godly king, says he calls him his brother. He calls him, as you are, I am. He's going to go join forces with him. But who else is in that mob? Who else is, I call it the unholy three amigos. Brother Terry said the unholy trinity, but I'm not going to give them much grace. Unholy three amigos. It's Joash, Jehoshaphat, and the leader of Midian. Wait a minute. Who's Midian? Midian, if you look at the map sometime, Midian, Ammon, and Edom all surround Israel. All of these have something in common, and then they all are somewhat descendants of Abraham, and that Moab and the Ammonites are the offspring of the illegitimate, or when I'm not nervous. Calm down. I get these names off. But remember when Lot was brought out of Sodom and Gomorrah, and we find that this illicit relationship he had with his daughters, that's Ammon and the Ammonites and the Moabites. Edom is Esau. I'm going to tell you something, folks. All three of these hated Israel. They all hated Israel. I mean, you've heard the term. What's the difference between a modern Arab and a moderate or a radical? The moderate only holds a grudge for 1,000 years. The radical holds it for 5,000. Well, that's the Moabites and Ammonites. They hated the Israelites. But Israel, the king of Samaria, makes a deal with the Moabites. I can't get over this. What are you willing to compromise? What are you willing to surrender to get what you think is the job done? You ever heard the term, the enemy of my enemy is my friend? Heard that term? Yeah, I just heard it in the Second World War. Our president made a pact with Stalin of Russia. Brutally made a pact with Stalin to fight the Axis powers. And they said, the enemy of my enemy is my friend. Church, that doesn't work. The enemy, your enemy, is God's enemy. He's always going to be your enemy, and you can't use him. Ever the term is never right to do wrong to do right. I won't speak about that tonight, but that's what the king of Samaria did. He says, I'm going to figure out some way to put down this rebellion of the Moabites. You have to read the entire chapter to get the whole story. But he's going to do what it takes to put this group down. Okay, Jehoshaphat joins him. And I want you to go down and we're still in chapter 3, verse 9 and 10. So the king, that's where it was, verse 9. Verse 10 says, then the king of, verse 9. So the king of Israel went up with the king of Judah and the king of Edom, and they made a circuit of 7 days journey, and there was no water for the army or of the cattle that followed them. Then the Jehoram, the king of Israel, said, "Alas, for the Lord has called these 3 kings to give them into the hand of Moab." What did God have to do with it up to this point? Isn't it amazing how we want to blame God when things go wrong? It's so amazing that when things don't work out right, God doesn't love me. God doesn't see me. God doesn't understand my needs. We see all these things going on in his life, and he jumps to the conclusion it's God's fault. Oh, I'll tell you, folks, I can't tell you how many messes I've gotten myself in. A lot more if my wife had kept me out of some of them. But because I'm willing to do things for the immediate. Do things that I need right now, and take care of things right now, and not willing to put it in God's hands. So God had nothing to do with this. He wouldn't be involved in this thing, joining with the Edomites, joining with going through the land of Edom, or the groups that they're doing. Finally, in verse 11, Jehoshaphat finally speaks up, and he says, Jehoshaphat said, "Is there not a prophet of the Lord here?" I'm going to talk more about Jehoshaphat's statement in just a little while. But let's just continue on. I'm going to get back to that because it's an important statement. But verse 14, he gets a message from Elisha. Verse 14, and Elisha said, "As the Lord of our host lives, before whom I stand, there is not where it is not that I regard the presence of Jehoshaphat, the king of Judah, I would not look on you or see you." You see what God said there? If it had not been for the influence of Jehoshaphat, even though he was in the wrong, even though he, what we call, backslid, God said he was willing to lead them, deliver them, because of the presence of Jehoshaphat. Folks, the more our influence of the church wanes in America, the less chance America has. We have the attitude in this country that if we just get rid of all the D's and put the R's in there, we'll be all right. No, not going to happen. Because the R's are just as corrupt as the D's are. Y'all know what I'm talking about, right? I don't care which side of the fence you're on. Somebody said, well, back in the original, our country originally, you had to be a Christian to run for office in a lot of states. You realize that, don't you? In other words, you had to be a Christian before you could run for a state office. And they wouldn't put that in the Constitution, but they did for the federal government. That was left up to the states. But man, we're so far away from that, the Christian influence is gone. Well, I got to take something else. Even if we put a whole bunch of preachers up there in Washington, and we didn't do the things that we're going to talk about, it might be better for a little while, but we got to get back to God. We got to get back to what God speaks, what God says. And anyway, nevertheless, God says, because of Jehoshaphat, I'm going to give the plan. And you can go and read those verses for your own self this afternoon and see what a neat deal God worked out for them. I mean, it's so cool. Joash did not work out a plan. He did not have any military training or military testing, and he went out on a battle, didn't take any provisions with him, ran out of water, and it's a miracle. Just watch how God does it. And unfortunately, give credit to the wrong place. But the presence of Jehoshaphat was the influence. Church, we need to be on God's side. No compromising, no giving in. No saying, well, we'll let this go. We'll look the other way. Can't do it. Can't do it. Can't join hands with the world in any sense. Anyway, the second thing they had was confused priorities. Confused priorities. They had taken their what was important and had replaced it for what they felt was important. Go with me back to chapter 7. The lepers came back, told them about what's going on out there. Of course, there was some discussion about whether they should go and check this out. Maybe the lepers were just trying to get them outside. Maybe they're spies for the Arameans. Maybe they came down here just to trick them out, open the gates, so they come out. And but they finally decided in this verse, it says, one of his servants said, "Please let some men take 5 of the horses which remain, which are left in the city. Behold, they will be in any case like all the multitude of Israel who are left in it. Behold, they will be in any case like all the multitudes of Israel who have already perished. So let us send." We got nothing to lose. Just like the leper said in the front, that we got nothing to lose by going. The king decided we got nothing to lose. But you notice something in that verse? Something that if you don't look very carefully, it said that they rode out on one of the 5 horses. You thought about prestige. Yeah. A symbol of power. You have horses. All through the Old Testament you'll see, or whenever they go to battle, they talk about how many horses you got. So it's prestige, power, and wealth. Prestige, power, and prosperity. That's my 3 P's there. They saw the importance of the horses far above the lives of the babies. Priorities got all messed up. Folks, have we gotten our priorities messed up in church, in this country, in our lives? You know, I'm old enough to remember talking about the church, but even before that, when I was a young fellow, I remember that, you know, that time change used to occur. I haven't old enough to remember when it used to. Occurs on Saturday night now, right? Or actually Sunday morning at 2 o'clock, to be technical, but I don't get up at 2 o'clock on Saturday night. I said it on Saturday night. When did it used to occur? No, what day? What day of the week?
Monday morning.
It changed on Monday morning. You set your clocks when you went to bed on Sunday night. You say, what difference does it make? You think about it for just a moment. How many times preachers on that time change, especially when it's going forward, don't forget to set your clocks. Don't forget to set your clocks, because what happens if you don't set your clock? You're late for church. You know why they used to do it on Monday morning? Because it was more important not to be late for church than it was not to be late for work. I'm serious about that, folks. They figured it out that, back then, that you had to go to work because you're going to get paid. You're going to punch that time clock at 0800 or whatever time it was. They figured you'd have enough sense not want to lose that hour's pay or be docked or written up by your boss. If you'd set your clock, you'd make sure that it was set so you could, not anymore. Not anymore. You remember time in the history of the church. Softball. Folks, I loved to play softball. I haven't played in a long time, but I loved to play softball. Y'all know my testimony. I was an agnostic. I didn't want anything to do with God. I didn't want anything to do with the church. But my brother-in-law tricked me. Actually, I found out later the pastor put him up to it. Richard Cordell put him up to it. They had a softball league, and in order to play in a softball league, you had to be in Sunday school 3 Sundays in order to play on the league. Oh my. That's an impossibility for me. 3 times. But you know what? A couple weeks went by. I wanted to play softball. 47 years ago, I was young enough to play softball, right? So anyway, I decided to go. So I love softball. You know the story. I've told it many times before. In Sunday school, argued with the teacher. I argued with the teacher. I did. We got in not a fight, but we got in a verbal fisticuff. Okay, and then after the Sunday school was over, they invited me to come to church. Oh, no, that's not part of the deal. You told me Sunday school 3 times. I can hold my breath for 45 minutes in Sunday school, but I ain't going to church. Go upstairs, the room's full, and next week is. What I'm saying is, Don, I love playing softball. Got upstairs, I got saved. Preacher, I got saved. Forward, I found Jesus Christ. Softball. But you know what, back then? There would not be a softball game, tournament, exhibition, anything to do with softball on Sunday or Wednesday night. Wouldn't do it. Softball, volleyball, I don't care what it was. You didn't do it on Sunday night or Sunday rather, or Wednesday night. You didn't do it. You know why? Because church people said, we're not going to participate in it. Folks, tell you something. Our priorities show through to our children and grandchildren. Let me tell you something. They see what's important to you. Yeah. Once a year we have this thing on TV called Super Bowl. You know what? Your grandkids are watching you, Grandpa. Yeah, you go down to church, watch Super Bowl? They don't start watching me yet. Okay. People really need to hear this aren't here, right? But the fact is, they'll see what your priorities are. They'll see this for your own prosperity, for your power, for your prestige. And the leading cause for rebellion among young people, they see the inconsistency in parents' lives, and they decide that, well, it's, I don't need all this. I don't need all that stuff. I don't need all those rules. I don't need all those regulations because it's not important to mom and dad either. We've got to get our priorities straight. What's important to you? There's a lot of things that happen on Sunday, and no, I'm not going to go there. Then I got in a discussion with one of our members here that had something to do today, and I said, yeah, I'm going to be talking about you, but they had something to do a little different. They're not here, okay? So I would mention today is a week. It happens. I know sometimes. The boss calls you up and says you got to work on Sunday. I understand that. Some things have happened. Some of those things occur. That's not a problem. What I'm talking about when you just frivolously decide that, well, that baseball or that golf tournament on TV or whatever it might be is more important to you, sure. Yeah. Compromising of your priorities. We'll look at the priorities of us, the priorities of the church, our individual priorities, our church priorities. When I first came here, I know I'm running out of time, but when I first came here, a question was asked to me about, I didn't do a lot of contemporary music back then. I have morphed somewhat. I am not totally morphed aside, but I'm morphing into liking it a lot more. We sing a lot of contemporary songs. But the question was asked me on Sunday night. It said, well, if you're not going to have contemporary music, how do you plan to grow the church? My Bible says, if I be lifted up, I will draw men to me. Not the song. Not the song. We can sing about Jesus. We can sing about whatever contemporary, modern, ancient song, whatever you want to sing, but you got to lift up Jesus Christ. And we have too many churches today that have decided for growth, for numbers, they're going to come up with some new plans, some new gimmicks, some new ideas, fall on the stage or whatever. Well, but there's something to entice people to come. That's priorities. I'm not against coffee, kiosks out there. I wouldn't necessarily go out and try to find one, but if somebody decided they wanted to have a coffee kiosk out there, only if it was Starbucks, that's the deal, all right? Only Starbucks, no. But here's the thing, that's the idea to come up. If we come up with a little lounge and it's coffee and have donuts and have the right kind of music, have fog on the stage, the church is going to grow. Priorities. Lift up Jesus Christ. He said, I will draw men unto me. He said when he was preaching on the mountain, if you hunger and seek after righteousness, do the right thing, and you will be filled. I think that has to do with church views. I do. I know some people say, well, it's talking about food. It's talking about way more than you'll be filled. Your spirit will be filled. Your church will be filled. If you get the priorities straight. I'm afraid the church is kind of lost some of that. Lost what's important. What should be number one. Finally, I'm going to close here. You've heard that before. I'm not a professional preacher, but I can still use that term. I want to talk about commitment. Commitment to the truth. Commitment to the truth. The confused priorities. I talked about the compromised politics. Brother Terry helped me with this alliteration. I went to Tuesday. I said, Brother Terry, I can't get your alliteration. Oh man, he was popping out like that. You know what he said? He said, I just think like that anymore. But anyway, the commitment to truth. Remember I said we get back to Jehoshaphat? Go back to 2 Kings chapter 3. He said he was going to make alliance of this allegiance with the king of Samaria. He was going to follow him and kill his brother and all these other things. But back in chapter 3, verse 11, what I have down here, chapter 3, verse 11, it says, but Jehoshaphat said, well, let me tell you the story. I've got to lead you up to this first. Let's go back to 1 Kings chapter 22. That's where I want to go. Jehoshaphat said, is there not a prophet that we can call? This is not new to Jehoshaphat. Excuse me, guys. I got this let out there on my notes here. Let's go back to chapter 22, verse 3 through 8. You'll see a pattern here. Verse 3 says, now the king of Israel said to his servants, now this is Ahab, by the way. This is Josiah's father. Said, do still doing nothing to take it out of the hand of the king of Aram. And he said to Jehoshaphat, this is Ahab saying to Jehoshaphat, will you go with me to Ramoth Gilead? And Jehoshaphat said to the king of Israel, I am as you are. Didn't change much, did it? At least it's consistent there. My people are your people, my horses are your horses. Moreover, Jehoshaphat said to the king of Israel, please inquire first of the word of the Lord. Well, at least this time, he said, let's ask God first. You don't find that the next time, do you? When things get really bad, they start asking God. It's kind of the way we are. We get in a bind, things go wrong, we're going to ask God. A couple more about that tonight with David. We're going to find out more about that thing. Let's start inquiring first of the Lord. I want let me see what I've got. Read through it. And then verse 6, and the king of Israel gathered, verse 5. Moreover, the Jehoshaphat said to the king of Israel, please inquire first of the word of the Lord. Then the king of Israel gathered the prophets together, about 400 men, and said to them, shall we go against Ramoth Gilead or battle, or shall we refrain? They said, go up, and the Lord will give it unto the hand of the king. Where did he get these prophets from? He got them from the northern kingdom of Israel. Go back and study the history. What kind of prophets of God do you think these were? No. Jehoshaphat, this time, realizes it beforehand. But the Jehoshaphat said, is there not a prophet of the Lord that we may inquire of him? Isn't there a prophet here that speaks to God that I can talk to and ask from God what's going on? What is happening here? Look what Ahab says. The king of Israel said to Jehoshaphat, there is yet one man by whom we may inquire of the Lord. But I hate him. Why do you hate him? Because he does not prophesy good concerning thee, but evil. He is Micaiah, the son of Amiah. But Jehoshaphat said, let not the king say so. Ahab didn't want to listen to him because it didn't tell him what he needed to hear. Yeah. Sometimes, you ever heard the term truth hurts? Yeah. But you know what? It's still truth. Sometimes well, I'll tell you what, next week, Barry's been, I've been married 51 years. Can you believe she's put up with me that long? Wow. 51 years. That's right. You're right. Here's the thing. I am so glad that when I start to make decisions, Betty is more in touch with God than what I do. Because you know what she'll do? Man, I don't know if you'll experience this or not. I don't care what it is. That decision to make. I'm going to do this. My wife says, hey, pray about it. Yeah. You know why we hesitate to do that? Because God might tell us something we really don't want to hear. I really want that fancy car. Or I really, whatever. I don't care what it is. I really want it. I really want it. And, even the Bible, when it talks about that the lender, the borrower is the slave of the lender. I don't want to get into that. Because I don't want to hear that. I want that shiny new car. Yeah. We get to the point in our lives where we really don't want to hear the truth because it interferes with what we want to do. Ahab wanted to attack Ben-Hadad, the Ammonites. He wanted to go up there and slaughter them. And all his 400 prophets said, yeah! Watch out, folks. The world's going to get behind you, especially that car salesman. Yeah, you need that car. All right, am I wrong? Oh, yeah. Take it home and drive it for a couple hours. You'll see this, how sweet it is. They call it puppy dog. You ever had to work in sales? Puppy dog that car. You go around. You ever done this? Go around and show it to your friends. Woo, man, is that shiny. Woo, horsepower back in the day. Watch this. Off the accelerator and squall. I'm old enough to remember that. We weren't worried the gas was 29 cents a gallon. Of course, only made $35 a week, so 29 cents a gallon is a lot of money. But anyway, squall. Y'all remember that squall? Anybody here? You don't appreciate it. But you took it around to all your friends and it was like, yeah, cool. It's the thing to do. But if you ask God, so we're going in. Yes, and I know it's a silly thing. But if you ask God the truth, I don't have time. We don't want to go back to the verses, but you go back and read back in chapter 6. That when Jehoshaphat was on the wall, and I got these names on this stuff. When the king of Samaria was on the wall, and Elisha said that tomorrow that there'll be The king said that this can't happen, and you know what the king did? You go read the verses, it says he sent the guards to go over and cut off Elisha's head. He did. He said, go get the rascal's head. I don't want to hear that stuff. Talking from God, man. I don't want to hear that. I've got problems of my own. I can't deal with problems compounded by God. We've done that so many times in this world. We vote for presidents. We vote for congressmen. We vote for dog catchers. Because of the fact we don't listen for who's telling. Now, I know they all lie anyway, but find out where they stand with their God. Find out where they stand with Jesus Christ. The question to ask, are you saved? Go to some of these political campaigns sometime and raise your hand. You better be ready to run because you'll get stoned, I almost guarantee you. Raise your hand and say, Senator candidate, have you been saved? Yeah. Ask that question. Truth. They'll run from me because they don't know. That's a hard truth. Right? Church, we've lost a lot of ground in our lives, in our country, in our church. We don't stand on the truth. Sad statistic from the Barna Group. Sad statistic. 55% of the people who call themselves Christians say there's no such thing as truth. Yeah. In other words, the Bible has truth in it. Some things in there are true, some things are maybe not so true. So you realize what God said, thus saith the Lord. These men messed up at the very beginning because they made this unholy alliance. They were willing to sacrifice the truth of God. Willing to sacrifice whatever it took to get their way. That's where we are. But think about it. Think about what is our stand on our commitments to political correctness? Is it God's correctness or is it the world's correctness? What's our stand on the priorities that we put you? If I were to ask you to do this, what would it look like? Simple as that. What would you do this for each day? Yeah. You know what I'll do? I'll find out. I hear pastors talk about finding out where the billboard is, you find out what priority. Show me your to-do list. And I'll show you your priorities. So get our priorities straight and are willing to take a stand for the truth. Tell you what, we studied in our Sunday school this morning about Stephen. Stephen, won't you read what he says in the last part of chapter 7 there? He told the truth, the truth, the truth. They all agreed with it until he got to the point where he said, the one that Moses talked about was Jesus Christ, the slave. That's what he said. Maybe not those words. That's where they got mad. We killed him. Yeah, truth. Sometimes truth is going to cost you a job. Yeah. Sometimes the truth will cost you a place in the community. But you know what? Like Stephen said, salt the face of God. Stay in the truth. You'll see the face of God. I want to ask Ross to come. We're going to sing a song. I'm putting up on the board. Cleanse me, O God, search me, O God. Get you all to stand. And this will be just a brief invitation, just a self-examination where you stand on these things. Have we compromised our lives? Have we put our priorities, got our priorities out of order?